send me the following image in a family group chat, and I just wanted to briefly talk about it and get my thoughts out there. So, the meme or the joke is we have all these people going one way, and it says people leaving the church because of what they've heard. And then the one little person saying me staying in the church because of what I know. So, immediately, I felt pretty upset and hurt by this joke. The person who sent this knows that I left. Um, So obviously, the first thing I thought of was we could flip this little joke image on its head, and there's me walking away from all my friends, family, community, wife, family, everything. Me leaving the church because of what I know, and people staying in the church because of what they've heard. I think I think this isn't necessarily true. It's just two sides of the same coin, right? If you're gonna flip the one side of the coin, I'm illustrating here how easy it is for those who leave and step away. This is their perspective. This is the other side of the coin. You think you know, and they're just or they're doing whatever because of what they've heard. And it's the same for the person who's left. They're leaving because of what they know, and you're staying because of what you've heard, right? And both of you are in this spot where it's like so obviously like if only that other person just knew or had my same experiences, then they would leave, right? They both view each other the same way. Um, I think a cheekier version I made of this would be this third one here. You have the one person walking away, me thinking for myself and coming to my own conclusions instead of living someone else's life. And then everyone else says people following the same religion as their parents and surrounding culture because it's what they grew up with. Now, this is a broader criticism of God and religion in general because it's a serious problem for any religion that where you grow up and what your parents believe are such strong indicators of the religion that you're going to believe the rest of your life. And so to think that you somehow stumbled into the correct one is just incredibly naive. That's what everyone thinks. And really, those who do stand up against their systems and walk away, that's a very difficult and, in my opinion, very noble thing to do. So now that I've kind of gotten all of that out of the way, right? I just want to briefly talk about. I've already pointed out that they're two sides of the same coin, right? And I think that neither side is necessarily helpful. We can validate both sides. I understand how the believer feels, and I understand how the person who leaves feels. And obviously, I left, and it really affected me. I'm recording a video now. It hurt me. Um, I think the biggest thing that I wish we could change about this, and I kind of got a little bit closer with that third meme, is you know it really is the sin of pride on both sides to say that I know. Right? There's so much more grace and humility and respect for, in my opinion, for those who talk more carefully, who say, I've been in this church 40 years. I understand that there's a lot of problems. I understand that there's a lot of issues, and I have questions myself, but I'm choosing to stay. And I don't know. That kind of response is almost more, it's holding space and it makes you seem more intelligent and like you've actually thought through things rather than both sides just immediately being, "Arr." And you could say the same about the person who leaves. They could say, you know what? I don't know anything about what's going to come after this life. I don't know whether or not Mormonism is true. But I read this somewhere. It was someone who had left. They made a post, a prominent person. I wish I could credit them, but they had said something along the lines of, you know, I left the church uh, because of my integrity before God. Like, if I made it to heaven and Mormonism wasn't true, right? If we're just all approaching this from no one knows, right? And I get to heaven and I get up to heaven and I made the decision to stay in the church despite everything that I know or have heard about church and the church and its history. And I'm up before God and it turns out Mormonism isn't true. I couldn't stand before God and defend myself because my only defense would be, well, I kind of just set aside my thinking and I just exercised faith and I just thought it would work out. I just chose to believe. Versus if you leave, you can stand before any God and say, look, like I left because of what I had read. And I'm butchering this, but it's all based around this idea of if God asks you, if we die and you're at judgment and God asks you, right? And if you're wrong about your religion, if he asks you, why did you stay? Right? If your only answer is faith in him, how are you going to answer the line of questioning that comes after from God? How are you going to answer God says, well, there were so many red flags. I sent you so many messages about why I was wrong. How could you not look into the history of your own church? How could you believe I'm actually part of that church? Like all these questions suddenly you're like, well, I just believed. I just thought it was a mistake in the history. I just thought it was, that's for Jehovah's Witnesses, that's for Scientologists, that's for every single, religion out there. I actually don't know if Scientologists believe in God, but you get my point. And so it is a more defensible position before God to stand before any God and say, look, like I left because I saw what I thought were red flags and I saw what I thought were untruths and that led me out. And if I was wrong, that's okay, but I can stand before you and answer clearly and defend myself and say, no, like I think anyone in my circumstance, anyone with my knowledge and my understanding would have come to that conclusion. I think that just believing on the blind faith is not as defensible before God as saying, I left because of the brain that you gave me, because of the reasoning that you gave me, because you taught me to value truth. And I was seeking the truth. And so I just think there should be more space held for those who do leave. I think there should be I there are a couple of people that I like some of the things they say. I know, for example, Jared Halverson has come under a lot of fire for his comments about women, but I actually do like how he tries to help members reframe faith crises. And he says, this is a good thing. This is what humanity does. This is the condition of man. It's the fall. It's Adam and Eve leaving the garden. And he's almost excited when people say, I'm having a faith crisis. He goes, good. And there's other books that have been written like I can't think of them off the top of my head. It's been a minute, but I just know that people do who are faithful members, they do encourage this feeling of good. Like think for yourself. That's great. That's awesome because I think everyone, whether you're a believer or non-believer, I think we all should be able to get to the point of you just want to be able to stand before God. And I think this is particularly true in regards to the the LDS belief, the Mormons, because their most recent talk and conference from their Prophet Russell M. Nelson, he had a talk about the confidence, standing before God with confidence. Like, can you stand before Him when you die? And I'm of the position of I've now left the church. I tell everyone I'm perfectly comfortable standing before any God, especially if it's the Mormon God. Uh, I can stand before anyone and I don't feel a fear. I don't feel upset. I'm not nervous. Like my confidence, as we could use Book of Mormon terms, has waxed strong. It will wax strong in the presence of God because of my personal integrity and because of I know for myself, I know what I went through. I know how hard I worked to find and seek out the truth, and I still do to this day. I still am recording these videos. I still am looking up things. I do still uh, experiment and try and find truth. There was a week where my wife had gone out of town, and I thought this is a perfect week for me to try and do some spiritual stuff in the privacy of my home alone. And I prayed. And I prayed to not just to God in general, but I prayed to as if I was still a believing Mormon, and I really prayed, and I just thought, hey, I just want to really explore this again, and it's that spirit of exploration and seeking of truth that I think is the most important thing. I don't think God would ever fault you for anything. This guy right here, he's gonna understand you if he's real and he's true. You have nothing to worry about. And so that's the main message I try to get through to people. I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't want this to go over 10 minutes, but those are just my brief thoughts. That's my brief thoughts of how we can kind of bridge this gap. And that's how I kind of see the two sides. And I think both sides just hurt the other side on an emotional level. And I think it's a sign of maturity and a sign of love to move past that and to move into a more nuanced and and giving space to other people position. Even if it is hard, and I still find it hard to do so with the other side. Okay, have a wonderful day.